You talk about how Obama acknowledges the problem, but you say instead of confronting it, he rationalized it, and that his solution basically was get educated. We're going to fix education, and that's how we're going to bring prosperity to the many. You said that Democrats are incapable of outrage, and you said at least Republicans pretend to be pissed off.
Yes, but and that's the magic, right? That's why they're so successful. But that's why they aren't wiped out as a party. When this is the great mystery of my lifetime that I've written about so many times. I've written about it so many times, I'm sick of it, and I'm never writing about it again. But how'd the Republicans get away with that shit? Think about that. The Reagan Revolution, where all of this started, and then they keep going, and they're now more beloved than, he's more beloved than ever. And it's
the Gipper.
And it's the same thing with the financial crisis. These guys deregulate Wall Street. They're proud of deregulating Wall Street. They appoint incompetent people to oversee the regulatory apparatus. They sabotage everything, run everything in reverse, and then, oh shit, we blew up the global economy. And I swear to God, and they're right, and the country sends them out in a landslide. Bring in Obama. 2 years later, they're back with an enormous landslide going the other direction. It's like, how the hell do these guys keep doing this? Part of it is their act, right? The right-wing act, which you and I have talked about so many times, and I've written about so many times that I'm sick of talking about it. And part of it is democratic failure. And the democratic failure aspect of it, I think, is the harder of the two things for people to swallow nowadays. But Barack Obama, when you mentioned that just a second ago, this is the classic case. I went back to, after all these years, I remembered that he had given that speech in Osawatomie about inequality and about the dying small towns and what's happening to, a way of life that's being destroyed before our eyes. And I hadn't heard anything about that talk since the day he gave it. And so I went back and looked it up and listened to it and read it, read the text. And there's a reason that we don't remember it. It wasn't very memorable. You know what his answer to the problems of middle America were?
Education.
Yeah. You got to get educated. You got to go out and get a college degree. Or you got to go to, you got to get, do better in school. You got to try harder. He had all these very sort of these slogans for it. He got it passed, right? It was all this funding for charter schools and standardized testing. Both Clinton and Obama, they're faced with a really massive economic catastrophe in huge parts of America, and their answer is what? Education, right? Everybody's going to go. And Obama was the one that said you need to make a college investment. This was another one of his catchphrases. Clinton's catchphrase was what you earn depends on what you learn.
That's great,
and they had all these wonderful ways of putting it. And this became common wisdom among liberals, among Democrats in those years, in the 90s, and basically right up until our own time, that was the only conceivable answer to these people's woes, was that they need to get a better education. And if you think about it for just a second, you suddenly realize this is not an answer at all. This is a rationalization. You're basically saying that these people are where they are because they didn't do well in school, and that the people who are on top are up there because they deserve it, because they got straight A's, or because they got accepted into a good school, and all the rest of this, this sort of bullshit that I live amongst here in Bethesda, Maryland, constantly, and that in Manhattan it's got to be a million times worse. But the idea is everybody has to be a member of the professional managerial elite.
PMC.
What was Robert Reich's term for it back in the 90s? The symbolic analysts. Everybody has to become a symbolic analyst, and if you didn't do that, then you don't have any. If you didn't do that, then you don't have any. You don't have a leg to stand on. You got no excuse. Anyhow, this is this is the Democratic Party, and
Right.
and so you wonder why. This is the sort of great mystery that I was looking at with What's the Matter with Kansas, and the great mystery that has sort of enthralled me over all these years. Why aren't these people turning in their time of trial to the party of Roosevelt, to the party of Lyndon Johnson, to the party of, for Pete's sake, William Jennings Bryan? You go down the list. What the hell happened? Why aren't they doing that? And a big part of it is exactly what I just described, because the Democratic Party comes across as a bunch of scolds. It's your own fault. There is no conceivable world in which someone who doesn't have a college degree gets to enjoy a middle-class standard of life. By the way,
it's on them.
Exactly. When I was born, that was the economic program of this country, was that the working class and white collar were basically heading towards equality. We weren't there yet, but that's where we were going. That was the plan, and now it's like that's impossible. That's the Democratic Party that says that's impossible. If you want a middle class standard of living, you got to be educated, and maybe you got 10 years from now it'll be like, maybe you didn't study the right thing. You should have gone to graduate school. Everybody knows you got to have a PhD in history.
Yeah, Mr. Frank. But it's interesting.
That's my joke, by the way, because the punchline of all this is. Right. What a disaster, right? The punchline of all this is, at the same time as they're saying all of this bullshit about education, the American educational system, higher ed in this country, is just like, it is like, it's as bad as Wall Street.
Right.
I mean, they're putting a generation of kids in debt. They're ruining a generation of PhDs. And I'm one of those who got a PhD in the mid 90s, went out there and it's like, oh, there's no jobs for you.